Alors, bonsoir tout le monde, bienvenue à cette réunion du conseil municipal
So good
du
evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular public meeting of Dieppe Council this February 27th, 2023. And just in starting, I'd like to mention that the City of Dieppe recognizes that the land on which it operates is part of the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship that the Mi'kmaq jointly developed and signed with the British Crown in the 18th century. These treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands or resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between the parties. And once again, then, good evening, welcome to all. We will call the meeting to order. We do have confirmation of quorum this afternoon, evening. And are there any conflicts of interest? We haven't received any notice of conflict of interest, so let's move on. We will move on to the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Turgeon-Roy, that the agenda be adopted as presented on the question. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Contrary will say nay. It's carried as presented. Which brings us to 7. This evening, we have 7.1, item 7.1A, 7.1A that I would ask you to add because we have a visitor this evening, our illustrious citizen of Dieppe, as everyone knows, is minister responsible for municipal affairs. Minister, it is a pleasure to receive you here amongst us this evening.
Et voilà. Ben, bonjour tout le monde.
Very good. Good evening, everyone. It's my first time appearing before this new council. I'd like to congratulate you, continue the great work you do. I'm here specifically this evening in order to recognize a person who has done a lot on behalf of the city of Dieppe. In my notes, it mentions 30 years, but I think this person has been working in New Brunswick for much more than 30 years and does great work. So on behalf of the province of New Brunswick, gives me great pleasure to recognize a person who has given their time and their energy to the community. Your mayor, Yvon Lapierre, receiving the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Medal, Platinum Jubilee Medal, for the service uh, given to the province of New Brunswick and to its communities, has shown exemplary service. And there is no person who deserves this more than our mayor, who is the perfect example of a person who is there to serve others. Your worship, if you allow me, Yvon, you are a person. As soon as I started as Bernard Lord's chief of staff in the early 2000s, you already had a vision for Dieppe. When I became CEO or deputy minister at the Allward government, we built a a company here, a building here in Dieppe, and I had a vision as in you had a vision, and 20, 30 years later, your vision still stands. So I would like to thank you personally for having been there to help me. You've been a mentor for me. You've helped us in the local governance reform as well. You've been there for New Brunswick. We've seen the success of the reform. It's not over yet. There remains a lot to be done. I will be tabling a bill this spring. But Yvon has been a great dad as well. I saw your kids over the weekend, and they think so highly of you. They always have a smile for us. And on behalf of the province of New Brunswick, for your exceptional service in the field of municipal affairs and for your leadership in the community, in your community. You will receive the Platinum Jubilee Medal of Queen Elizabeth II. Congratulations.
Merci bien. À toi. C'est un beau certificat de tenue de notre gouverneur. Merci. On fait un autre. Merci. Monsieur le maire, félicitations.
Thank you, Your Worship, and congratulations. Continue the great work you do.
Je l'étais mon micro, c'est une surprise. Eh bien,
Well,
on continue.
let's move on then.
Évidemment, c'est l'item régulier du
The
7.1 qui est la
regular
renseignement
item 7.1, inquiries by council members of Kodiak Regional
régional de Kodiak.
RCMP.
Nous avons comme toujours notre
As always, we have our representative of the RCMP,
l'inspectrice
Inspector,
Madame Arsenault Farah. Bonsoir.
Inspector Chantal Arsenault-Farah.
Ça s'en vient, là, ça s'en vient.
Just a minute, it's coming.
Voilà.
There you go.
Bonsoir, merci beaucoup,
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship, and congratulations for the honor you just received. I'll try to be just as smiling, but I don't think I can be as interesting for sure. Now, if you allow, I just wanted to talk to you about some things that have happened in the last couple of weeks and some progress we've made. And I'd like to take the time to get some public messages across as well. February 6th, I've been looking at the number of files on vehicle thefts in the Greater Moncton area. And I can report that over these last 3 weeks, we've had 14 cars reported stolen in the region, which made me go to check in the drawers to see the circumstances around these thefts. And in 8 of these 14 cases, people had either left the keys in the car or couldn't find their keys. So they weren't sure where their keys were. One of the cases out of 14, somebody had broken into the vehicle and had really played with the electronic spark plug, but there was an older truck. But in the other cars, they were trying to figure out how the vehicles were stolen or why. Because we always try to figure out how to prevent theft. It's not always possible to prevent all car thefts, but if we take the means necessary, if to we can reduce the number of cases. Of course, in some of these cases, when people stop very quickly, they think they're going to go to run an errand for 1 or 2 minutes and they leave their car running outside, and it's a crime of opportunity. Somebody goes by, sees a car with the keys in the ignition and just takes it off. So if you start your car in the morning to warm your car up because it's 25 below, well, I don't blame you, but you know, lock your car. Don't leave it running with the cars open, and always leave your cars locked wherever they are. And one of the thefts that was reported was on February 10th. It was a Kubota tractor that was stolen from Champlain Street. And I'm not saying that the keys were in it. I didn't read the details on this one. I don't know. But on February 10th, there was a Kubota tractor that was stolen from Champlain Street. It was a very expensive tractor. And on 20th of February, we received information that led us to Skuduk area. We called the Shediac detachment to help us in the investigation. A search warrant was requested, and we went to this address on Skuduk, in Skuduk and recovered the tractor. A
On
39-year-old man and a 29-year-old woman were arrested, and they will appear in June for that case. There were two other cases that were successful. There was a vehicle stolen on Park Street on February 6th. We found the people in possession of the vehicle. They will be brought to justice as well. And on February 15th, there was the theft of a vehicle on Spruce Street, and we found the individuals in the Irish Town area in possession of the vehicle. So we do solve some of these cases, but we would ask for your support to try and reduce the number of vehicles stolen. And on behalf of the Crime Reduction Unit, our efforts there are on people who sell drugs. And on February 16th and 17th, we issued two search warrants in Moncton, one for Second Avenue, the other one for a property on Church Street. In both cases, we seized firearms and ammunition, drug, and people were charged for drug trafficking. Once again, I'd like to thank people for the information we receive, people who call Crime Stoppers. You have to be the eyes of the community. We're all neighbors. If you are a neighbor, if you are in the area, if you have information, please share it with the police so that we can work towards keeping the community safe. As you see where there's drugs, there are other things as well. The General Investigation Unit as well. I'm sure you've already saw this, that on February 23rd, there was a case where a person was injured by a firearm on Lutz Street. The patrollers did a great job. They immediately sent patrols to identify the suspects. And just after a couple of minutes, a car was stopped, and two people were arrested and charged with this attempted murder. So it was very quick. It was well done. And once again, we have people who have ears and eyes on it and share information with us, and we're able to stop the people who are responsible very quickly. And another one, Your Honor, yeah, Your Worship, there's the theft of catalytic converters, and there have been a number of them, and the people get frustrated, people get angry because the criminals will target whoever they want. They don't care if it's a bus from the daycare or if it's a community organization bus. They just want the quick cash. But because of somebody who was vigilant on February 18th, we received information uh, saying, indicating that somebody was under a truck on Collishaw Street, and he seemed to be trying to remove something from this van. So because somebody called, the first thing somebody did when they saw them is they called us, and our patrollers were there very quickly and arrested the person. So it's the eyes in the community that help us to arrest the people. This person will be appearing in court on May 16th to respond to the charges. So we ask you to be good neighbors and to report anything you see. Be vigilant. And I wanted to mention something else. Uh, we had two fatal collisions over the last few weeks in the region. You've probably heard that on Amiro Street, close to Melanson Road, a young 20-year-old was uh, killed in an accident. And a few days earlier, there was a pedestrian in Moncton that was hit by a car and died from his injuries. So please always be careful, take your time, and try and take your time to get somewhere. If you have any questions, thank you. Any questions? Once, twice, going three times sold. So thank you once again for your excellent presentation and for all of the work the RCMP does in our community. And please spread the word, tell your officers that we really appreciate it. And as always, you're more than welcome to stay, but if you need to leave, we'll understand. Thank you so much.
OK, d'autres
So,
présentations,
other presentations.
les chalets,
Les
hommage
Chalins,
aux bénévoles.
a tribute to volunteers.
Donc, bonsoir, Monsieur le maire, membre du
Good
conseil.
evening, Your Worship, councillors.
Oui, la première.
It's
Fais-moi la première,
I'm
Denis, vas-y.
I'm very happy to be here this evening. So welcome. Thank you for welcoming us. Jérémy Robichaud, who is a community officer for the recreation services, is here with me. We're here this evening to propose a change to an event that has been ongoing for a number of years, but has not been held since the beginning of the pandemic. The change would be for the tribute to the volunteer evening. It's something that we've been doing for a long time, even before I started here or Jérémy. But when we said that we were going to continue thinking of it and we want to propose a new project. And the recreation services works very closely with communications on this concept that we're going to present to you. And we're there. I think that Dieppe has been recognizing its volunteers for about 40 years. So I think that the what we're presenting to you this evening will be the same thing, but different. And we the National Volunteer Week is from May 17th to the 22nd. That's when we have hold our event. And I will give the floor to my colleague Jérémy Robichaud.
Donc, Jérémy, toi aussi, c'est une première.
Jérémy, so it's the first time here for you too. Yes, so first time, two first timers. Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship. Good evening, colleagues and councillors. I'm pleased to be here. But we'd like to present the new project, what we are proposing to pay tribute to our volunteers, and the we call them the Chalin Awards. We'll explain why we're proposing these changes as well, and I'm sure you will have questions. First of all, what is a Chalin? If you're not familiar with it, it's a flash of heat lightning. It's a flash that really light up the sky. It's an Acadian expression, but it really lights up the sky for an evening. So chalin are like lightning flashes, but it's we want to use them to light up the efforts of our volunteers. So so this is an idea that came from the communication department, and I wanted to congratulate Mr. Godreau because I think the name was really a good one here. This and it's an expression that comes from Acadia, and based on the feedback that we received since then, people really like the name. So we decided we will continue to use this name. Now, why do we need to change the format? Well, that's a good question because it's always good to innovate. We want to innovate. We want to try new things. I'm new in this position. I've only been here since October. So this is something that is dear to my heart, really, to change things up. And I want to generate curiosity as well, to, get people to ask, what is a chalin? And it's to, we wanted to recognize the value of citizens as well. Citizens in the old version, everybody didn't have a chance to be recognized in the sense that now, and we'll come to this a little later in my PowerPoint, but the community will be able to nominate people. So citizens who wouldn't have been able to be recognized in the past could be now. We want to foster this sense of pride in the city. We want to develop a willingness for people to be nominated through this prestigious event. So it won't be just an evening, just an event, it'll be a whole gala. So there are 8 categories. It won't be a single, just according to the different organizations. It'll be according to different categories. The categories are seniors, arts and culture, leisure and sport, environment, youth involvement, community involvement, involvement by a newcomer, and the personality of the year. The objectives of the evening, well, first of all, to attract new volunteers. As you know, we never have enough volunteers. It's something we always want to try and promote. We want to retain our volunteers as well. We want the organizations contribute to the city's values. We want the volunteers to be present each each of the
faire des nominations n'importe où comme ça, on peut
anybody
nommer les
from the
candidates dans
organizations can
l'après-midi, tiens, aujourd'hui,
nominate people, but we want to
pour cette
keep the
soirée-là.
volunteers
On peut relier
involved in the
énormément ensemble, on
evening.
peut amener
We
10 à 100
want to
d'appartenance au
connect
groupe,
them
puis
together
ça
to
le rend
give them a
interactif
sense
aussi.
of belonging and to give them a sense of accomplishment.
Pour ce qui est des nominations, les nominations
Now,
vont
for
être faites par les résidents,
nominations
comme
will
mentionné
be made
auparavant, ça peut
by
être fait par
residents.
les organismes
As I
directement.
mentioned in the past,
Ça peut
it
être
was
par
the
les résidents qui vont avoir
organizations
un
that would
peu
nominate
l'implication en ligne,
their
les communications
volunteers
sont développées
directly,
aussi.
but now it'll be
Puis
made
ça,
by
ensuite, on va
residents.
voir, ça peut
There
être
will
ouvert à la
be
communauté, puis tu vas
uh,
pouvoir nominer dans le fond une personne de
anybody
tendance
can
sauvage qui s'est écrit des blogs, qui
nominate
pourrait
a
recevoir une distinction
person to
à
receive
travers
this
de ce gala.
award
Il
through
va y avoir un comité de
during the
sélection de trois
gala. There
citoyens.
will be a
Donc,
selection
eux autres vont
committee
être
made up of
inéligibles pour les
3 citizens.
nominations,
Now,
que ce soit
will
parce qu'ils
not be
sont
eligible for
employés d'une
nomination
organisation, quelque chose comme
themselves,
ça.
but
Mais ces trois
they could be
personnes-là
employees of an
vont recevoir toutes les
organization or,
nominations,
for
puis vont
example.
choisir
So they
l'auteur
will
qui est
receive
gagnant.
all of the nominations
Donc,
and they will choose
c'est ça. Puis s'il y a
the
trois candidats
winner.
gagnants,
So
puis il va y avoir trois personnes en
three
nomination.
people will be
Donc, trois personnes par
nominated.
catégorie.
So
Ils
three
sont
people
17 invités à la
for
soirée
each
avec leur famille.
category, and they will all be
Puis le
invited
jury,
to
dans le fond,
the
va choisir le
gala, to the
gagnant. C'est
event
une
with
fois
their
que à la
families. The
soirée en tant
jury
que telle,
will
on va savoir
choose
qui est
the
le gagnant.
winner,
Donc, les trois
and
vont faire des
everybody will
propositions,
find
puis on
out
va
the
réunir
night
avec leur
of the
famille au
gala.
vendredi
So
soir.
all the
Puis un
three
petit peu comme
nominees
on va
and
se
their
reprendre avec
families will be
les
invited to the
Oscars. Puis
family.
la
Think
personne
of
qui
the
a gagné, ben,
Oscars,
puis
for
les gens
example. The person
veut gagner, ne le sait pas
will be
encore.
there.
Mais dans le
Everybody
fond,
wants to win, of course,
c'est
but
plus
nobody
qui est
knows
nominé est déjà un gagnant. Fait que ça donne
who
cette opportunité-là
the winner
de
is. But
d'offrir une belle
just being
soirée à tout le monde.
nominated means you're already a winner.
Fait qu'admissibilité.
Now,
Fait que dans le fond, si tu fais du bénévolat à
eligibility,
Dieppe,
if
ou tu
you
y
do
demeures,
any
tu
volunteer
peux être
work
éligible
or
à
live in
être
Dieppe, you are
nommé.
eligible to
La
be
personne doit ne pas
nominated.
avoir été rémunérée
You have
ou pas
to
présenter
not
de
have been
candidature
paid
non
for the
plus.
work you did, and you
Donc,
cannot
le jury ne soumet pas
self-nominate.
de candidature non
The
plus. Donc,
jury will
évidemment,
not submit
c'est
any
eux qui vont décider
nominations
des
either
nominations
because obviously
par
they
la
are the ones
suite.
who are going to
Les
choose
types de
the
bénévoles qui sont non
winners.
admissibles,
Now,
les
there are
organisations
some sorts of volunteer
syndicales ou
work that are
professionnelles.
not eligible, those in the political,
Il va y
labor,
avoir
or
une soumission
professional
par année
fields.
par citoyen.
There can be
Donc,
one submission
admettons
per
qu'on
year per
veut éventuellement
person. For
quelqu'un qui va
example, if
soumettre
I want to
une personne,
submit
c'est seulement moi, je
somebody's
suis la
name, well,
personne qui nomine. Donc,
I
je
can
nomme une personne. Puis
I
s'il
can
veut
only
redemander
nominate one
chaque année de
person.
nominer quelqu'un,
Once
bon,
I
on va
cannot
juste
nominate a
commencer à
dozen
nominer
people. So
trois
I can
gens parce qu'après
each
ça,
person
on veut
can
que tout le monde ait
nominate
une chance
one
d'avoir un
person,
porte-parole par
and
rapport
we
à ça.
want to give everybody the chance to
Il y a des
nominate
éligibles à nouveau pour la même catégorie.
volunteers.
Si tu es
Now,
déjà nommé pour la
nominees
catégorie,
are
tu peux ne
eligible for
gagner
the
pas.
same category
L'année
another
prochaine,
year,
tu peux être encore en
except the
nomination
winner.
pour
So
la
if you were
catégorie.
nominated,
Sauf
you
la
can
personne qui a
be
gagné, bien évidemment, on ne voudrait pas non plus
nominated
quelqu'un qui gagne à tous
once
les
again,
années, comme ça,
except the winner. We don't want
on
the
peut pas
same
perpétuer. Mais
person
si
to
tu es
win
déjà nominé, tu
year
peux
after
devenir
year.
de
So
nouveau. Puis
if
la
you've
façon que ça
already been
fonctionne, parce que
nominated in the
c'est
past,
ce
you
que tu as
can
fait
be
durant l'année.
nominated again.
Donc,
And
tu
it's
restes
based
pendant
on what
l'année.
you've done during
Si
that
tu étais en
year.
nomination peut-être
If
l'année
you were
d'avant, tu n'as pas fait
nominated
assez bonne
one year for
nomination, mais si tu as fait
something,
encore mieux
uh,
ou c'est
but
peu
then the
importe,
next year you do
tu
even
vas être
more,
nommé.
even
Le jury
better, you
décide
can
comme
be
ça. Donc, tu
nominated
sens que
again. So
la personne
that
va être la plus méritante selon cette
the
catégorie-là.
person who most
Il peut y
deserves it
avoir aucune
will win every
candidature
year, and there will
type
be no
posthume.
posthumous
Dans le fond, si
nomination.
la personne décède,
If the
tantôt on
person
avait parlé un petit peu
dies,
de ça par rapport à ça. Si la
meanwhile,
personne serait
well,
nominée puis
if
elle
the person is
décéderait
nominated and
dans le fond, la période de
passes
nomination et le gala, la personne
meanwhile,
va quand même être reconnue.
that they
Mais
will
si la personne
still
est
be
déjà décédée avant la période
recognized.
de
But if
nomination,
the person
sa candidature
uh,
sera éligible.
is deceased before the nomination
Pour ce qui
period,
est des
they will
critères
not be
d'évaluation,
eligible. Now,
l'engagement
what
bénévole,
will the
dans le fond, est
evaluation
ordonné
criteria be?
diversité des
Well, the
actions et
volunteer
années d'implication
involvement,
pour
the
valider
hours
la note.
donated, the diversity of
La
actions, and the
reconnaissance des
years of
milieux,
involvement.
la portée des
The
actions, le
sector
nombre de personnes touchées
recognition,
et l'impact
the
des
reach
actions
of
à
the
long terme.
actions, the number of the
Les
people
défis,
reached,
les défis
long-term
rencontrés envers leur
impact
engagement.
of their
Donc,
actions,
s'ils ont
and
eu
the
des choses
challenges.
comme la difficulté de traverser à travers
If
une
they've
situation.
had challenges and had to overcome them, for
L'inspiration,
example,
l'influence positive par
inspiration
l'expérience et
as well,
connaissance.
positive influence through
Le
experience and knowledge,
modèle, dans le fond, ont-ils été un bon modèle, puis comment est-ce qu'ils ont inspiré les
and
autres populations.
how were they
L'innovation,
a good model?
puis la
How did they
découverte de la
inspire
communauté, continuer
others?
à faire les mêmes choses tous
And
les jours.
also,
Puis
if
l'inclusion, que
did
bon, est
they
super important de nos
do
jours, donc on
something
veut
new? Did
éviter
they
le
bring
respect,
something new? Was
l'acceptation
it
des différences.
innovative? And
Comment on
did
fait
they
pour les
promote
respectueux et
equity,
valorisant pour tous
respect,
lors
and
de leur
accept
passion de bénévole.
differences? Were they respectful and create a
C'est
rewarding
ça pour la
environment for
présentation.
all?
Je vous ouvre la
And
parole pour
that's
des
the
questions et
end
commentaires.
of the presentation. I'm
Merci.
open to your
Question,
questions and
commentaires par
comments.
les membres du conseil.
Any questions or comments from council?
Madame Turgeon-Roy.
Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Thank you. I love the name, the Chalin Awards. It's a great project. My question is on, well, and perhaps somebody else can answer, but have we all ever considered having a volunteer center to manage the volunteers in the community? Because we're taking over this project to recognize our volunteers, and I know it's important for the city to do so. but have we ever considered having a hub or a center for volunteers? It's always been managed by each organization.
Vu que c'est votre première fois,
I
peut-être
don't
j'aurais
know.
pas dû poser la
This
question
is
là,
your
mais
first time here. I shouldn't have asked you
juste
your question
curiosité,
this
on est
time,
au
but
début
I'm
du
just
projet,
wondering,
on veut juste
since
voir
this is the beginning of this project, it's just being launched.
Puis je
Well,
parce que j'étais pas service des loisirs
uh,
premier tour dans la ville de Dieppe, mais je sais
I
qu'on
I
a
was
toujours
in
eu des gros
recreation,
appuis
sports and
au niveau du
recreation
don
in
de
the
sang.
back,
C'était
but I
pas
know
quelque
we've
chose qui
always
faisait nécessairement de santé pour ces
supported
gens-là, mais je pense que la ville de Dieppe
a
a
lot
toujours
of the
fait
associations.
beaucoup
There's
d'affaires
never been a
pour ça.
hub for
Puis
volunteer
avec
organizations,
ces
but
défis-là, c'est
the
certain
city of
que
Dieppe has
c'est
already worked very
quand tu
closely with
bénévoles,
the
c'est sûr que
volunteer
je ne peux pas
sector.
dire
Now,
complètement que
I
moi, j'ai
can't tell
pensé
you concretely
ta lutte quand
what the future will bring, but
Peut-être ce que je peux ajouter, c'est
well,
qu'on est
what
en
I
train
can
de
add
revoir
is
notre
that we are
l'accréditation des organismes.
reviewing
Donc, ce qu'ils ont et tout
or
ça, c'est
our
vraiment
accreditation
quel
process
support et
actually.
soutien
So
qu'on veut
we
donner à nos organismes.
we're looking at the
Puis une partie
support
de
that
ça
we can
aussi,
give our
on
organizations
se
as well.
regardait
Now, a part of that, of course, deals with the volunteer aspect.
discussions, puis on
So we
réfléchit
are
à
in
des angles pour
discussions
approcher les
currently,
gens, mais également
and
à
we're
quoi
looking at this
les organismes ont besoin aussi comme
internally to
soutien.
see what
C'est
organizations
ça,
need
encore
in
une fois,
terms of
le centre
support.
de bénévolat.
Will it become a volunteer
Certains programmes
center
existent déjà, comme le
or
centre de bénévolat de
certain
jeunesse
programs that
Ville
already exist could
il est
be
attendu des choses
used?
comme ça.
Can
Ils
we
la connaissent, ces
help
programmes-là, les
to
programmes des centres de bénévolat
ensure
jeunesse qui
connections
sont faits
between
pour
them?
les
Can
membres,
we do
par exemple.
something to
On est en train de
have the
réfléchir à
volunteer
comment
organizations better known?
en bout de ligne,
So
on va
anyhow, we're thinking about all of this right now to
parce
see
que
how we
ça,
can
c'est
better
déterminant.
support the whole
De
volunteer
voir, oui,
sector.
là, on va
Yeah,
dépendre sur
but
nos résidents
because
pour
yes,
faire des
we
nominations,
want to
des choses comme
depend
ça,
on
mais
our
lorsqu'on a un
citizens to
groupe
make to the
participatif dans la
nominations, but
communauté,
when we
on
have
dépend
this,
plus d'eux autres pour nous aider dans
perhaps we could
l'organisation
use the
des
community to
événements
help
comme
us
ceci ou des
more
reconnaissances.
in the
C'est ça.
organization of this kind of event
Merci.
and recognition. Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Merci.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Merci, ma conseillère Mélissa Boudreau.
Councillor Melissa Boudreau.
Merci. Ma
Thank
question
you.
est un peu semblable.
My question is similar.
Par rapport avant, c'était des organismes
In the past,
qui faisaient les nominations.
it was the
Donc,
organizations that would nominate
on va
candidates.
s'attendre que les
And
citoyens
now
vont faire
we're
des
expecting
nominations. Vous
citizens
pensez qu'il y
to
a un
nominate
défi à ce
volunteers.
niveau-là,
Do you think there might be a challenge
d'aller attirer
in
les
that
gens
to
à
try and
faire les
get
nominations?
people
Et,
to nominate
est-ce qu'on pense faire comme une
others?
transition, peut-être envoyer
Will
un
there be a
petit
transition?
message
Are we going to try to get a
actuel
message
comme
out
quoi,
to
genre,
the
voici,
organizations, the current
vous
organizations, to
pouvez
tell
quand
them
même,
this
j'imagine
is,
que
I
vous
mean,
pouvez
you
quand
can
même
still
garder une
nominate, right? You
relation
can
avec
still
le
nominate people,
citoyen au
but
lieu
as
avec
individual citizens rather than as
l'organisme en
an
question.
organization.
Je sais pas comment
I don't know how are
envisager
you
la transition.
how are you
C'est une excellente
expecting
question.
to proceed with the
Je pense un
transition?
petit peu sur l'ordre d'idée qui est
Excellent
à
question.
mentionner. C'est
Well,
vraiment,
that's exactly what you
dans le
mentioned.
fond, ça va
Yes,
être les organismes qui
that's
vont
the
recevoir toutes les nominations
organizations will
individuellement.
receive
Parce
all
qu'on a
these
déjà
same
eu d'autres
emails that
organismes,
we
par
always
exemple, qui
do
étaient
because
intéressés à venir
we had a number of
donner les nominations
organizations
déjà.
who wanted
On
to
va miser
nominate
pour la
people
première année
already.
sur
So
eux.
in this
Pour ce qui est
first
pour les
year, we're going to,
nominations, est-ce
rely
que
on
c'est de
them
cette
to a
façon-là?
great extent for the
Quand même, les
nominations.
organismes
Now,
sont
as
plusieurs personnes impliquées, donc ça
organizations have a
c'est
number of people
c'est ça.
involved, they can
Ça va vraiment
nominate
faire
more than one
c'est le
person
tout
as
acquis.
well.
Ça va beaucoup
So
plus être sur
it won't be a
quelle
question of whose
organisation
turn it
mérite de
is it,
recevoir des
but who
nominations. Ça
within
peut être
the
un collègue, ça peut être
organization
quelqu'un. De
deserves
cette
the
façon-là,
nomination. It could
si
be a
c'est quelqu'un
colleague,
dans la communauté
if it's or if
qui
somebody
mérite, je
from the
pense que les organisations sont les mieux
community.
placés pour le
If I
savoir.
think the organizations are the one who are
Ça
best
peut être un
placed to
défi, mais
know
si
if it's somebody from
les
the
organismes
community
sont
that
plus
deserves it
impliqués comme qu'ils le faisaient dans le passé, je
more.
pense que ça va
But
être
the
facile.
organizations will still be involved. So I think
Merci.
that
C'est vraiment
will help us.
mignon aussi
Thank you.
le nom chaland.
And I really like the name Les Chalins as well. That's great.
Merci,
Thank you.
Madame
Thank
Godbout,
you.
la conseillère
Thank you. Councillor
Merci.
Goodbout.
Moi, j'ai deux
Thank you.
différentes questions.
I have two questions.
Au niveau des catégories,
Yeah, in the
comment est-ce qu'on a,
categories
est-ce
here.
que c'est quand même les catégories
Is it
traditionnelles?
the
Est-ce qu'il y en a
traditional
qu'on modifie
categories or were they changed? Were they adapted? Could you explain how you
Dans le fond, les
developed
catégories,
these
c'est comme ça.
categories?
Il n'y avait
Well,
aucune catégorie
before that, there were no
personne. Dans le
categories
fond, c'était
in
seulement
the past.
chaque organisme nominait quelqu'un.
There was
Fait
each organization
les
would
catégories,
nominate
c'était un
one
petit peu
person.
pour
So the
amener
categories was
tous
really
les
in
gens de la
order
communauté à
to
être éligibles à une
bring
catégorie ou à un autre selon le type
to allow
d'activité
everybody in
qu'ils
the
sont impliqués dans.
community to be
Fait qu'on a
eligible
décidé vraiment,
for
c'est
something.
quelque chose qu'on, dans
So
le fond, il y a
this
peut-être,
is
j'ai envie de dire, une dizaine de personnes qui ont
this
travaillé
is
à
something
travers ces
that
catégories-là pour
you
faire
know
sûr
a
qu'on
number
touchait un petit peu
of
à tout
people, about
toucher à tout
10
le monde.
people worked on these
Puis
categories
on
to
veut
make sure
vraiment
that we
que tout
included
le monde
everybody
qui fait le
possibly.
bénévolat a
And
chance
so
à rentrer dans un de ces
to give everybody
critères-là.
who
Donc,
does
on a
volunteer
réussi à
work to
trouver
have
plusieurs
the
de
chance
personnes,
of
mais encore
being
que je
in
nous
one
mentionne
of
une
these
catégorie comme
categories.
implication
But for
étudiante
example,
pour les
youth
jeunes
involvement that
qui
can be
sont
working
encore
with
à
youth who are still in high school, for example, or been working with seniors. Some people might be eligible within different categories. Just you,
Mais c'est sûr qu'on va prioriser
but we
les
will
gens qui vont avoir le
give
plus
a
de moyens,
priority to
qui ont autant
those
d'impact sur notre
who have had
territoire.
a greater
C'est ça, on va
impact,
vraiment
of
essayer
course,
de
in each
trouver
category. But we really
des
tried
catégorités
to find
globales
categories that
pour
were very broad, very inclusive.
Il y a une catégorie
And
que
there's
j'aurais aimé
one
voir,
category I would have
si à un
liked
moment
to
donné vous
see,
allez l'avoir
and
comme critère ou d'autres choses, mais ça serait peut-être
perhaps
l'aspect
you'll add it
de
later,
promouvoir la
but
langue française,
perhaps the
promouvoir le français,
promotion of the French
souvent on parle de
language,
promotion,
the
là
use
aussi,
of
ça
French.
peut être
Perhaps
une catégorie
that
à
could
part
have
qui
been
serait
it could become a
si c'est
category at some point,
préférable
something that could be
valoriser
considered
les gens de notre
to be
communauté
add,
qui
so that
effectivement
to
font la promotion de la langue française.
to
Ça
really
nous
recognize the people
J'aime
who
beaucoup cette
work hard
proposition-là.
to
Ce que je
recognize the
mentionnais,
French
c'est
language.
que
I
pour
really
cette
like
année,
that.
s'il y a des
And
gens
but
qui
for
font des
this year,
personnes dans
we
cette optique-là, ils peuvent le faire dans la catégorie d'apprendre art et culture,
we
le côté
they
culturel,
could
puis
be
l'environnement
included
organiser.
in arts and
Je pense que
culture.
c'est une
Language
belle
would be
occasion.
perhaps of art in
C'est un
art and
bon plan
culture,
d'affaires. Merci
perhaps,
beaucoup.
but that's a really good point.
Vous
Thank
avez
you so
demandé
much.
des questions, c'était au niveau du budget. On parle quand même d'un
My second
événement.
line of questioning was with regarding about the budget. We're talking about a prestigious event. What could you talk a little bit about that, or is this going to be a fundraising activity, or is there going to be a cost to the city? We do have a budget for that evening, and we calculated the costs, and we're able to offer a nice, prestigious evening with the budget that we have. And we're also looking for sponsors, so we'll be offering prizes to the winners. So we're looking for sponsors, and the amount will be announced. It'll be a bit of a small sponsorship amount so that we can offer prizes to the winners. We'll be able to offer prizes and also create kind of an environment and a meal as well. Yeah, and this has to be accessible to volunteers, and there shouldn't be a cost associated for them anyways. That's what I wanted to confirm. Great. Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question about the eligibility criteria. On page 11 of the presentation, you were saying they have to volunteer or live in Dieppe. So if you simply live in Dieppe, does that mean? Well, when we were writing to the eligibility, it was just the way that it's presented on the slide. But basically, what it means is that if you live in Dieppe and you volunteer in Dieppe, you're eligible. But if you live in Moncton and you volunteer in Dieppe, you can still be eligible. So what we're looking for is people that do volunteer work in our city to benefit the community. So basically anybody that does volunteer work in Dieppe is eligible. Okay, so it's not simply, you don't just have to live in Dieppe to get that award. Okay, it wasn't clear. Thank you, no problem. No further questions, just a question on my part. That means that I won't have to spend an hour and 45 minutes standing on a stage with a sore back for 2 days later. That means, yes. I'm glad that this format makes you happy. Yes, of course, if this project goes ahead, I'll be happy. But we'll be there. But all right, I don't see any further questions or comments. So thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. I think good job for rookies. All right, next item, a presentation on immigration, update on activities, and our local expert on the activities, Ms. Émilie Haché, is here to speak with us. Hello. This is my first time too. I think this is an evening of firsts. I just have one small addition to make, so I'll just ask you for a couple of minutes. I just want to make sure. There's a small typo that I wanted to correct.
Parfait.
All right. So we've seen each other several times this week, and the trend continues. So tonight, I'm here just to provide information on the progress made since July 2022. I want to give you a few statistics from the a bit statistical data, and I wanted to talk about the priorities for 2023. I hadn't had a chance yet to meet with you, so I'm happy to be here to make you this presentation. So just a reminder that immigration is part of our strategic plan. We want to become the destination of choice for Francophone immigration to the Atlantic region. And then just a reminder as well, this is a summary of the Dieppe immigration strategy. It's divided into 3 focus areas, and I think if you want to consult it, it's part of the package tonight. So you can just take a look at it. And I also want to say that focus area 3 is done in partnership with Expansion Dieppe because it deals with economic development as well. Now, progress made in 2022, I'll be talking about general progress. So we're talking about the creation of an immigration department within the city, and I was hired. I arrived in the city. We're also going to talk a bit about. I'm also going to talk a bit about participation in regional presentation. I was able to speak on a number of working groups in the region. I sat as well on the Immigration Watch Committee for the Greater Moncton Immigration Partnership. I also sit on a number of labor market groups. I was able to participate in the Destination Canada Forum in November, and that allowed me to meet a lot of future potential newcomers. There was also an MOU that was done with Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada in partnership with Expansion Dieppe. There were a number of collaborations that were done with associations, ethnocultural communications, and service providers such as CAFI. So, for example, the Mont d'Enfait celebration, we worked with them to help with that activity. I also participated in a number of meetings as well. Exploratory visits, people who are considering immigrating to the region. I also met with a number of residents and helped them navigate the services. I recently worked with a Syrian family that requested bus passes for their school children, or for their children rather. So I explained, what things are available, what are the youth services, the water services, or swimming services. And so it allows me to have a direct contact with people in the community. I also want to speak or to present a few pieces of data. And the data that I have here is data that I took from the most recent Statistics Canada sent us. But David Campbell is preparing a report that will be available shortly, and that goes into much more depth. And there's even data that will be specific to Dieppe. So you will probably have access to that shortly. So this is data from the 2021 census, and there has been growth since. So keep that in mind. So currently in Dieppe, 9.7% of the population were or are immigrants or permanent residents. So these are people that have settled here permanently and that are on their way to becoming Canadian citizens. In between 2016 and 2021, there are roughly 1,500 people who arrived. And then there's another category of people, so temporary residents, people who have work permits or international students, and that category is comprised of 715 people. So our population is growing and it's getting more diverse. And so if we can include both those categories, so temporary and permanent immigration, we have 12.3% of Dieppe's population that comes from permanent or temporary immigration. And here's a bit of a table that shows how the percentage of permanent immigration population changes. So in 2011, Dieppe is in blue. And if we compare to 2021, now orange is the provincial average. And so Dieppe is now surpassing the provincial average in terms of immigrant populations. And so we're becoming a welcoming city, or positioning ourselves as a welcoming city, and I think that growth will be even stronger in the future. talking about places of birth now of the immigrant population. So the place from the Asia is the biggest source of immigrants, and I've listed the countries there. So we have Asia, Africa, Europe, and Americas, and those are from Statistics Canada. The top 3 birthplaces for all immigrants, and here we're talking about permanent and temporary agreements. So we have the Philippines, India, and Morocco in 2022. And among the most recent immigrants, we have Philippines, India, and Morocco. Rather, sorry, I meant Philippines, India, and USA in 2021. In terms of visible minorities now, and note that the categories that I'm presenting here are categories from the census itself. So 10.6% of the population belongs to a visible minority. So those numbers are growing and will need to be taken into consideration rather, sorry. Priorities for 2021 or 23. We will continue to implement the 2020-2024 immigration strategy. We will continue our internal and external collaborations. Now, I have the opportunity to participate with a number of groups through communications, human resources, and even with Expansion Dieppe. That gives me a chance to collaborate with a number of groups to make sure that our strategic planning objectives, that we make progress on those. And the immigration department team is growing. And we've also implemented a service offer in terms of navigation, communications, and so that we can provide better quality service to immigrants. Now, these are a few theme days that we want to look at for this year. So March 21st will be is the International Day of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. May 21st, the World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development. June 27th, the Canadian Multiculturalism Day. August 1st, Emancipation Day. And we also have the first week of November, which is National Francophone Immigration Week. So there are certain collaborations that will continue in 2023. So, of course, the Greater Moncton Local Immigration Partnership, I will continue to be on that, and I will also continue to work with Expansion Dieppe. Then there's the Southeast Labor Market Partnership with regard to attraction. Will be, as I said, there are settlement agencies, ethnocultural groups and associations. Their meetings will continue. We also would like to be present on in various job fairs, the Greater Moncton Job Fair and the Newcomer Settlement Fair. And we want to participate in international missions like Destination Canada. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments from councillors? Let's start with Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question with regard to your stats. 715 people were non-permanent residents. Now, that's a lot of those are international students, and we have a pool here in Dieppe with CCNB. But what is our vision in terms of retaining those students in our community? You know, they're there to, they come here to work and settle, but is there something that's been set up where we meet them? Or is there discussions and dialogue with them? Well, all of the retention activities are part of the Dieppe immigration strategy, and those are things that I want to talk. I want to have discussions on that recently. My role this year was to meet with all the groups and the associations and to see how we can collaborate to set up those things. And by meeting with those groups, I've been able to hear what people have to say. So I'm still kind of in the listening phase, but we're going to be taking action shortly. Okay, I just want to continue on the same point. Now, you mentioned your partnership with the with 3+ and expansion Dieppe, and it would be interesting in your dialogues and conversations to involve this pool of students that we have in those, so that we can encourage them to become residents and contribute to economic development. I totally agree with you. Yes, of course. Thank you. Ms. Godbout, Councillor Godbout. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. This is just an observation and perhaps an invitation to reflect. When we were at that activity on Friday night, it's our community, and we have to be a welcoming community to newcomers. We each have a role to play, and it's by participating in our community events where we have a chance to kind of interact with people that these people feel welcome. So, Ms. Haché, I'm very happy that you're there and you're interacting with organizations, but it's really our responsibility as citizens and residents to make people feel welcomed and to foster a sense of belonging. So I can encourage you to continue in your work, and I encourage the community to get involved as well. We all have work to do in that regard. Yes, I completely agree with you. It's a group that, or it's an effort that should involve all the players. Anyone else? All right, well, I'll add my grain of salt here. I had the opportunity this afternoon to sit in on discussions with Émilie on immigration. There was a deputy minister there. And that was Ms. Taylor was there as well. The CCNB was represented. The University of Moncton was represented. The Association of Francophone Municipalities. So there was some really good discussions to identify the challenges and to try to increase Francophone immigration, specifically in New Brunswick. And we're not just speaking for ourselves, but Émilie represented us well, and I didn't want to get in the way, so I tried to kind of stay back as much as possible. But although I did, take the floor a few times, but I think we're on the right. We're heading in the right direction, and we look forward to see things improve and progress made. There are a lot of challenges when it comes to immigration. There are a lot of challenges when it comes to Francophone immigration. One of your colleagues here had sent me an article from La Presse, from Canadian Press this weekend. Okay, now that I'm looking, I thought I'd sent it to you. Yes, I did send it to you. Okay. It was quite an in-depth article on that talked about all the failing, despite all the difficulties, we're recognized as among the best in the world when it comes to immigration. So I think, we can't be too humble about our efforts. And all right, I've already kind of gone on too long, but thank you for your presentation. And now those who know me knows that I tend to talk a bit too much sometimes, but all right. That brings us to the next item. Are there any questions by members of the public? Item number 8. Is there someone here from the public that has questions or who wants answers to questions? Yes? Okay, please approach the microphone. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't speak French.
Don't worry about that. We operate in both.
My French is not good.
Okay.
If you identify yourself.
My name is Ana Herrera, and I live in Dieppe in Council Street.
Okay.
And I've been here for 4.5 years. And I have a problem with the garbage dumping from my next door neighbor. And although I have contacted the bylaws and talked to Gabrielle, who is in charge, they haven't solved the problem. And I have sent emails, pictures, and the last mail that I received, he stated that they could not control the tenants or the landlord from this property. So, and all they can do is, to give them tickets. So, in my opinion, it's precisely the bylaws are there for control this kind of problems. So I don't know if there is any possibility that these bylaws are revised and changed so people do the right thing. Because, I have rodents, I have worms, I have birds, all the garbage is going towards my place on daily basis. And they leave it in an area that is not allowed. There are bugs coming towards my property, flying with the wind, and it smells, and I just cannot take it anymore. I am a little bit upset about it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So no. I mean, obviously you've been in touch already, as you said, with our bylaw officers.
Yes, I have contacted them for 4.5 years almost. And nothing is being done. All they say, we are following the procedure, we are looking in the file, we cannot do anything about it, but give them tickets. So my question is there anything else that the city can do to control this? Because in my opinion, the landlord is the one that actually indicated to the tenants where to leave the garbage, and that is the wrong place. All he has to do, in my opinion, is to buy 3 bins. He has a quadruplex there. Buy 3 bins, one for recycling, one for the organics, and the other one for garbage. Instead of having the bags flying open all the time and coming to my property, I just can't, I just don't understand it. I never had this problem before. I came to Dieppe believing that my life would be nice and relaxed, but it hasn't been that way, because of these issues. And also he dumps the snow into my property, all the debris from the trees. So I am a dumping place,
So can you leave your name and
yes,
and phone number to this gentleman, this right next to you, and we will do a follow-up. This guy will be looking after that and looking into it, because that's his responsibility, and I'm sure he will be. You will be hearing from him or one of his representatives, and move further into the action. Move from words to action.
J'espère que oui.
Merci bien.
Merci.
I hope so.
I have a question. When they tell me that they are sending tickets, are those tickets, like fines? Do they have to pay money? What is a ticket actually? Because it's not clear to me, because that is his response. I'm sending tickets, but what are these tickets? I like to know that, if you can explain to me at one point later. It doesn't have to be done now.
Tu réponds? So Mr. Simard will respond.
So those tickets are official documents that allow us to go to the court and present it to the judge, and normally there's a fine that will be pronounced.
Yeah, but nothing is happening in 4.5 years.
I'm not aware of this particular problem. I will talk with the bylaw enforcement tomorrow, and I will see what we can do about that.
Okay, I hope so, because other than that, I will have to sell my place. I can't continue to be like this. I'm too old.
Okay.
Thank you for.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here. Autre question ou
Any further questions or documents received? Nothing of the sort. Okay. Oh, sorry, Your Worship. We did receive a request this morning, but it'll take more than one day, so we'll come back to the, and it involves garbage as well, but we'll come back to that with it the next meeting. It was tabled too early. Okay. All right, well, that ends item number 7, which brings us to item number 8, which we've just completed. Okay, are there no further questions by members of the public? It would seem not. All right, adoption of the minutes. The regular council meeting held on February 13th. Do I have a motion? Councillor Godette, seconded by Councillor Lantaigne. On the question. No questions. The interpreter cannot hear the exchange. Thank you for checking. All right, seconded by Councillor Thibodeau. On the question. No questions, so all those in favor signify by saying aye. Nay. So the minutes of the regular council of February 13th is adopted. 10, motions, memorandums, and nominations. 10.1, planning and development. Mr. Melançon. So just now, it's rare to see the mayor's surprise, but there's always a first. We had a first with all the new people presenting this evening, but so all right. So the first file, we want to set a public hearing date for the zoning bylaw Z10. There are amendments being asked by a promoter that would permit the main use of semi-detached dwellings. And it would, so what that means is that we would allow a unit that is more affordable in a residence that's designated as a permanent residence. So RM and R3. So we want to set a date for the public hearing here at the City Hall. And we're also asking for advice from the PAC committee. And we're looking at May 8th, 2023, which will be their meeting. So we're asking for permission to continue. So to read the resolution, who would like to read the resolution? Councillor Turgeon-Roy. That council schedule a public hearing on April 11th, 2023 at 7 p.m. at Dieppe City Hall to hear objections pertaining to the proposed amendments to the text of zoning bylaw Z10 2021, and that council requests the written views of the Planning Advisory Committee and extends the deadline pursuant to subsection 110.3 of the Community Planning Act to May 8th, 2023. So proposed. So motion made by Councillor Turgeon-Roy, seconded by Councillor Jean-Marc Rideau. On the question. Councillor Godbout. Just a question, a follow-up question. So zones RHM and R3, where are those? I know that we can see them on a map, but it's very scattered, right? Throughout the city, if I understand. Mr. Girard. Yes, thank you for the question. Yes. So those zones are distributed throughout the city. And the reason why we're targeting those two specific zones is that multi-family dwellings are already permitted in that zone. But here we're talking about maximal density with the proposal of 4 units within a single unit. So that's a promoter that's asking for that, who's seeing a lot of requests for people who would like to have that form of that type of development. So there's zone RHM and zone Z10 multifamily dwellings are already permitted, but when you divide a lot to have a semi-detached dwelling, that it's separated by a wall, there was no so that this would allow us to so that our inspector to make the necessary inspection and to make sure that those units are well done. And so this would be open to many other developments with the same type of situation. All right. Any further questions? I don't see any questions. So those that are in favor signify by saying aye. Against, say nay. The motion is adopted as presented. Mr. Melançon, 10.2.1. This is this involves the ice rink floor for the Uniplex. So following an RFP, three bids were received, and the winning bid came from Athletica Sport Systems at the cost of $268,485. So the recommendation is to authorize the bid. Because that would bring greater variety to the activities offered at the Uniplex. Who would like to read the resolution? That council award the contract for the purchase of ice rink floor covering for the Uniplex to Athletica Sport Systems, Inc., pursuant to its proposal dated February 9th, 2023 at the cost of $268,485 plus HST, and authorize that this expenditure be defrayed from account number 3320127903, General Capital Budget, General Equipment Purchase, Leisure. So proposed or so moved by Councillor Lanting, seconded by Councillor Odette. On the question.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire.
Thank you, Your Worship. When you talk about covering, the ice rink floor covering, what is it exactly? Because we have two ice services. Is it because of where the ice is actually located or elsewhere? Well, if you allow me, I'll ask Mr. Book to answer the question. Yes, it is a covering to really cover the ice rink. So 200 by 185 feet, and it's the same size on both sides. So it can be installed on one side or the other for whatever use, for graduation ceremonies or different activities. So we won't have to remove the ice like we had to do last year for this type of activities. Now we're just going to cover the ice surface rather than having to remove the ice altogether. So it will allow us a greater number of activities and events. Oh, thank you again. Clear. Thank you. Any further questions? I don't see any. So if there are no further questions, all those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. It carried as presented. Which brings us to item number 11, 11.1, municipal bylaws. Mr. Melanson. Yes, this is for the reading of the summary. You have it in front of you. We have amended the building bylaw somewhat. And the content is well explained. We had presented a summary of the major changes at the last meeting. So tonight is just for the reading of the summary and for a third reading by title only. Thank you. Who would like to read the summary? Councillor Godbout. Thank you, Your Worship. So by summary reading? Yes, summary. So reading of the summary of bylaw Z-11 2023 building bylaw, and pursuant to the authority vested in it by the Local Governance Act, Chapter 18, the Council of the Municipality of Dieppe duly assembled enact as follows. Building bylaw Z-111 2023. This applies to the design, the construction, the alteration, the replacement, and demolition of buildings in the city of Dieppe. It used to come under the Municipal Act, Municipalities Act, and now comes under the Administration Act and of the Department of Justice and Public Safety. This was considered in order to align with the requirements of this act in order to be able to continue to issue permits and building extraction. A, a reimbursement in case of cancellation of a project, which is much fairer, is proposed in this new bylaw. The table of the determination of the costs of the construction is in the schedules with the bylaw in order to ensure greater transparency. This bylaw applies to all the whole territory of the city of Dieppe in under bylaw under the different wards, and I so move it. In summary, yes, by summary reading, it's been proposed by Councillor Godbout, seconded by Councillor Brideau on the question. No questions. So everybody in favor will signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. And it is the reading of the summary of bylaw Z11 has been carried in third reading. And we will, no, sorry. It has been carried in summary reading, and we will now read it by title only. Thank you, Your Honor. So I would move the adoption of bylaw Z11, the building bylaw by title only, and I so move. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Godbout, seconded by Councillor Brideau. On the question. No questions. So all those in favor. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Boudreau has a question. Yeah. Yeah. Hi. I wasn't quick enough earlier. I had a question. And now this is a building bylaw. I was just wondering if this is the type of bylaw in which we could add conditions, let's say, conditions for an apartment building to make sure that it's accessible to for the disabled, that kind of condition. Could we add that type of condition? For example, for recycling, let's say that we wanted to make sure that apartment buildings had a recycling room in order to sort the recycling. Would that be in this kind of bylaw that we could add that? I can add in part, and Alexander can add to it. We have a building code that gives the general guidelines. The province just adopted a new building code in 2020, and that includes that kind of rule. Now, and what was your second question? For I forget, Councillor Boudreau, you were asking, you were talking about the environment. Well, yes, waste. For example, we visited the apartment building at 82 Sunset, and they had built a room for sorting of waste, and it was a great initiative. But not all new apartment buildings will include a room that will allow for the sorting of their waste. So is it in this type of bylaw that we could add that kind of condition? Well, to bring changes to a municipal procedure when the provider, the service provider, doesn't have the ability or didn't do well, doesn't have the space available. This is a discussion that we've been having for years, and we get a lot of feedback, but we keep stressing the point that it's very important for the city of Dieppe. But before we actually include that in a bylaw, well, the service provider has to be able to offer the service. So I know there have been different strategies adopted with a higher tonnage rate for apartment buildings, but I think it has to be imposed in the end. Like the apartment building that you just mentioned, that they're doing great work, and maybe Alexandre could add something, but we're continuing to work on that. No, that's all. I have nothing to add. Thank you. Thank you. If there are no further questions, all those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. So Z11 is carried in third and final reading, which brings us to 11.2 bylaw Z-23, the Planning Advisory Committee of the City of Dieppe, for the City of Dieppe. Reading in its entirety. Well, that might be long. Oh, it's just a page long. Okay, you shortened it for us. So, Mr. Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you. So bylaw Z-23 2023, bylaw to establish a planning advisory committee for the city of Dieppe. Be it enacted by the Council of the City of Dieppe as follows. Pursuant to the provisions of the Community Planning Act, RSNB 2017, Chapter 19, a planning advisory committee of 7 members is hereby established for the City of Dieppe. 2. Bylaw Z-23, entitled A Bylaw to Establish a Planning Advisory Committee for the City of Dieppe, adopted December 10th, 2012, and filed in the Westmoreland County Registry Office on December 20th, 2012, under number 322-92089, is repealed. 3. This bylaw comes into force on January 1st, 2023. And 4. This bylaw shall apply to all of the City of Dieppe territory pursuant to its existing bylaw respecting wards. And I so move in the reading in the entirety. Yes, it's been moved and read in its entirety. On the question? No questions. All those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. Z-23 is moved in its entirety. And now we will read it by title only. Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw Z-23 2023, a bylaw to establish a planning advisory committee for the City of Dieppe. And I so move in third reading by title only. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Thibodeau and seconded by Councillor Godet in third and final reading by title only. All those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. It's carried as presented. Which brings us to 11.3, bylaw S-6, 2023, dog control. Who would like to read the summary of the bylaw relating to dog control pursuant to the Local Governance Act, Section 15, 2 and 3. Councillor Lantaigne, go ahead. Since I like dogs, yes, sure. Thank you, Your Worship. So for a summary reading, under the Local Government Act, it's a bylaw relating to dog control pursuant to the authority vested by the Local Governance Act, SNB 2017, Chapter 18. The Council of the Municipality of Dieppe, duly assembled, enacts as follows. The articles of the bylaw are unchanged as compared to S6 2019, enacted on November 16th, with the exception of Section 3.9, entitled Responsibilities of the Dog Owners. And 3.9 is the maximum number of dogs permitted per household is 3, with the exception of commercial kennels authorized under the zoning bylaw. And this bylaw will apply to all of the territory of Dieppe under the bylaw on wards in effect. And I so move the summary reading. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Lantaigne, seconded by Councillor Brito on the question. On the question, Councillor Godbout. Thank you. Now, if we were to take the zoning bylaw where we want to change, where we have a well, let's say we have four units, could we have up to 12 dogs in this building? Is it per building or per household or per unit, per apartment building? I'm just trying to understand what it actually means. Yeah, that's what it would be. Three three dogs per household, and that's what it's been for a number of years already. That's the situation currently. I mean, the chances that that happens, that's another issue, but yeah, I find that a lot. I get complaints because it's not enough. It's but when we're talking about densification, we have to think about all of our bylaws. For me, this is a perfect example of that. Of when you have more people in a smaller area, there's advantages, of course, but there are disadvantages. And for me, if I were a resident after in a multi-unit building, that would be a disadvantage for me, for sure. It's just a comment, and I'm sure I'm not the only one here, but in the city, I just find it I find that 12 dogs, I mean, if somebody complains to the city, they'd be told, no, that's allowed. I mean, I'd have nothing against dogs, believe me. It's just, I just don't start sending me emails. No, no, I love dogs, but I understand that we're not going to amend this here tonight, but it's just when I look at densification and that objective, we have to consider a number of other things, and this is one of them. I'm not against the amendment here this evening because that's not what we're talking about, but it was just a comment.
C'est pas tous les propriétaires qui permettent les chiens
Well,
aussi, là.
and not all owners allow dogs either. That's another thing you have to consider. But if if everybody permits it, well, when this bylaw had been revised when we talked about the number of dogs that had been there had been a big debate. There was a big debate about it. So various residents had intervened in the process when there's a public hearing. Public is always right. All right. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Brideau, go ahead. I just want to tell an anecdote here. In a residential region, sometimes there's fights between neighbors. And now, if there were fights between the dogs, that could be a whole other issue. It would be an orchestra. All right, if there are no further comments or questions, those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye, or with nay if you're against. So bylaw S-6 2023 is adopted in summary reading, and we'll now go to the third and final reading. Councillor Lanting. So bylaw S-6 2023, a bylaw relating to dog control. I move by title only. By title only, final reading, moved by Councillor Lanting and seconded by who was that? Brideau? Is he still there? Yes. Any questions? No further questions, so all those in favor signify by saying aye, against by saying nay. So bylaw S-6 2023 passes in third and final reading. Notice of motions. Nothing has been received. Item 13, inquiries and announcements by members of council. All right, so to make sure that I don't forget him, we're going to start, or with her rather. We'll start with Councillor Boudreau. I have nothing to add this evening except to congratulate you on the medal that you received this evening. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Councillor Lanting. Thank you, Your Worship. So very quickly, I too would like to offer you my congratulations on the medal, the Jubilee medal that you received this evening. And I would just like to wish everybody a happy March break. I think that's next week. So to all our students and teachers, I think that will do us good. So that's all for me. Have a great evening. Councillor Godbout, nothing to add this evening. Again, congratulations as well. Councillor Turgeon-Roy, thank you and congratulations on my part as well. I want to tell you that. I have an information question with regard to an intersection in Dieppe. It's Acadie and Kennedy. I don't know who can answer this, but I don't know if an analysis has has ever been conducted on the stop signs in in that area. Has any consideration been given to a three-way stop? Kennedy, Laurier, and Acadie. There's a three-way meeting, and I've heard this more than once that it's a dangerous intersection. People always want to turn on Kennedy and not wait because people are coming from Laurier or Acadie. I don't know if an analysis has been conducted and to see what we could do to improve that intersection. Ms. Spencer. Thank you. I will take a note and I will follow up on that. Yes. I'm just asking the questions because sometimes we don't have the background, but I know that there was a pedestrian crossing because it was dangerous for people who were crossing Kennedy. It was dangerous there, but I agree. I go there every evening and I see the same thing. Yeah, there's more and more traffic in that area. So now I'm not sure if that would justify a three-way stop. The volumes have to be quite balanced, but I'll do a follow-up. Well, maybe a blinking stop sign. I don't know, but all right. And I have one last thing. I just wanted to wish good luck to our athletes at the Canada Games, and I wanted to wish them. There's a group that have finished, but there's a group from Dieppe as well, so I wanted to congratulate them. Thank you, Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. I want to come back to a question I've already asked. Champlain in the Lakeburn area and the speed limit of 70. Cars are going faster than 70 kilometers an hour in that area. And there are residents who have asked several times if we could lower that speed limit to 60 instead of 70. And I had brought that question up and I was told that it would be looked at. Was there a follow-up done on that? I don't know if Mr. Cormier is online, but I will follow up with the engineering department if not. Mr. Cormier, can you hear me? Thank you for the question. I'm going to follow up again with my team. I think that there was a check that was done, but it might have been done a couple of years ago. I know that the speed was lowered at Aviation Road, but I'm not sure if elsewhere. Well, but people are afraid to walk there. There's no sidewalk and there are no trails. So with the car traffic, and we've eliminated the bus service in that area, so people walk, and it's dangerous. So I think if we keep taking into consideration all of that, we reduced from 60 to 50 on Le Marais, and I think it warrants more specific attention in the Lakeburn area. Thank you. That's all for me. And I too would like to congratulate you on your recognition. Councillor Brideau. I have nothing to add this evening except to tip my hat to our mayor for this medal. Congratulations. Thank you. Councillor Gaudette. Thank you, Your Worship, and I too wanted to congratulate you for all your achievements. And that's all for me. I have nothing else to add. Thank you. Thank you. I would also like to encourage all our young people who are participating in the Canada Games in Prince Edward Island. There's some great performances. There have been some great performances with the speed skating team, but there are also a lot more activities coming this week. This is the second wave of athletes that will be going. So that's about it for me as well. I would like to thank everyone for your cooperation, your usual cooperation, and there are people that I want to thank. So the minister, of course, for thinking of me, but also the members of the various municipal councils that I've had so far, and who are the most important players in the municipal decision making, but also all the city employees who guide us, and sometimes who bring us back to reality when we get a little carried away. So thank you for all these people, for all the contributions over the years, and it's not done. Have a nice evening.